is a man alive right now who has never raised his voice, never threatened anyone, never begged, never even asked, not directly. And yet, everyone around him does exactly what he wants. His employees work late without being told to. His rivals retreat without confrontation. The people who once thought they were using him eventually realize they were the ones being moved. He doesn't look like a manipulator. He doesn't seem dangerous. He seems agreeable, almost forgettable. That's the point, because the most powerful people in history, the ones who quietly shaped nations, organizations, families, they didn't win by demanding. They won by engineering. They built invisible architectures of desire, obligation, and identity around the people they wanted to influence. And by the time those people noticed, it was already done. Today I'm going to show you how that works. Not the cartoon version, not the manipulation tips from a 2009 self-help book. The real thing, the cold, ancient, deeply psychological machinery that the most formidable people in history used and still use to move the world without lifting a finger. Pay attention, because by the end of this video, you'll be doing one of two things: using these principles, or realizing, with quiet horror, that someone is already using them on you. Let's begin with a question most people get completely wrong. What does it mean to influence someone? The common answer? Persuade them. Convince them with logic. Give them a good reason. And that's fine if you're writing an essay. But real influence, the kind that actually changes behavior, that makes people act in ways they didn't plan to, that operates somewhere below the level of logic. It operates at the level of need. The Austrian neurologist Viktor Frankl, who survived 3 Nazi concentration camps and came out writing about the human need for meaning, said something that most people miss. He said, "The last of the human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any circumstance." Beautiful sentiment. But there's a dark mirror to that observation. If you can shape what someone feels they need, if you can alter their emotional circumstances, their social environment, their sense of identity and recognition, you don't need to change their attitude. Their attitude changes itself, and they'll believe it was their own idea. That's not manipulation the way people think of it. It's not lying. It's not trickery in the cheap sense. It's something older, subtler, more powerful. The Romans had a phrase, sine vi, without force. The greatest commanders of the ancient world knew that an army moved by fear fights poorly. An army that wants to fight for you, that believes in the cause, that loves the commander, that army is unstoppable. Caesar didn't just command. He became the living symbol of Roman greatness. His soldiers didn't obey orders. They pursued a shared identity, and Caesar built that identity on purpose. Deliberately, scientifically. He knew their names. He ate with them. He remembered the details of their lives. Was it genuine warmth? Maybe. Maybe not. But it was effective. Absolutely. Without question. Effective. And that is the first thing You need to understand before we go deeper. Influence without asking is not about tricks. It's about architecture. You build the conditions. You shape the environment. You create the emotional context. And then you simply wait. Let's get into the reversals. Reversal 1. The identity trap. Never ask for action. Ask for character. In 1966, two Stanford psychologists named Jonathan Friedman and Scott Fraser ran an experiment that should have made headlines for decades. They called it the Foot in the Door Study. Researchers went door to door in a California neighborhood, asking residents to put a small, unobtrusive sign in their window. Just a little card that said, "Be a safe driver." Almost everyone said yes. 2 weeks later, a different group came back to the same homes. This time, they asked residents to place a massive billboard on their front lawn. A clunky, ugly, completely intrusive sign that also said, "Be a safe driver." The results were astonishing. Among people who had never been approached before, only 17% said yes to the giant sign. But among the people who had agreed to the small sign 2 weeks earlier, 76% said yes. Same message, same residents. Completely different result. Why? Because somewhere in those 2 weeks, those people had quietly become someone. They were now the kind of person who cares about safe driving. That small initial agreement had done something invisible and permanent. It had updated their self-image. And once your identity is in the game, your behavior has to follow. This is the first reversal. Most people try to change what someone does. The master influencer changes who someone is. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote, "And most people only remember the cynical parts." But in chapter 17 of The Prince, he observed that a ruler who is loved does not need to compel. He only needs to provide occasions for people to express who they already believe themselves to be. The citizens of Florence didn't follow Lorenzo de' Medici because he paid them, or threatened them, or even persuaded them. They followed him because he had, over years of careful positioning, made himself the symbol of Florentine identity. To betray Lorenzo was to betray yourself. How do you use this? You don't say, "Can you help me with this project?" You say, "You're exactly the kind of person who sees things most people miss. This project needs that." You don't say, "Can you be nicer to the new employees?" You say, "You've always been someone people trust here. That's rare." Give someone an identity that contains the behavior you want. Watch how hard they work to live up to it. This is not flattery. Flattery is empty. This is identity assignment. And once accepted, the person will defend that identity themselves. You've done nothing. You've asked for nothing. They're already moving. Reversal 2. 7. The obligation engine. The debt people can't repay. In 1969, psychologist Dennis Regan ran an experiment at Cornell. Participants were paired with a confederate, a fake participant who was actually part of the study. In some sessions, the confederate did something small and unsolicited. He bought the real participant a Coca-Cola during a break. Just a Coke. Nobody asked for it. Later, the Confederate asked the real participant to buy raffle tickets. The people who received the Coke, they bought twice as many tickets as the control group. Not because they liked the Confederate more. In fact, when ratings of likability were measured, it didn't matter. The obligation overrode everything. Robert Cialdini later named this reciprocity and put it in his famous book. But what Cialdini's commercial version misses is the darker, older application, the one the masters used. Because reciprocity, when deployed intentionally, is not about generosity. It's about debt architecture. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor who unified Germany in the 19th century, arguably the most effective political operator of his era, never asked for favors directly. He gave them. Constantly, quietly, strategically, he sent wines to opponents. He remembered names and birthdays. He helped obscure bureaucrats with small, seemingly inconsequential problems. And then, when the time came for a parliamentary vote he needed, when he required the support of a man he'd never directly spoken to about the matter, that man would think, Bismarck once helped me. It would be wrong not to support him. The debt didn't need to be spoken. The debt functioned whether or not it was acknowledged. This is the second reversal. Forget asking. Give first. Give in ways that cannot be easily repaid. Not large, conspicuous gifts. Those create suspicion and social awkwardness. Small, perfectly targeted gifts. Things that say, I see you. I know what you need. I am the kind of person who gives without expecting. And the moment you do that, the other person begins to live inside a debt they didn't ask for, didn't consent to, and cannot easily discharge. Every subsequent interaction carries that weight. They feel it. They may not name it, but they feel it. Here's the dangerous refinement. If you give and someone ignores the debt, if they feel no reciprocity, that is also information. It tells you who you're dealing with, and the master influencer adjusts accordingly. But most people feel the debt. Most people lie awake slightly uncomfortable when they haven't returned a favor. And that discomfort? It's yours now. Use it with restraint. Use it wisely. But understand what it is. It is a lever. Reversal 3. The scarcity of you. Why? Available people are never powerful. Let me tell you about a man named Charles Maurice de Talleyrand. If you don't know him, you should. He served with distinction, or at least with survival, as a minister under the French monarchy, the Revolution, Napoleon, the Bourbon Restoration, and the July Monarchy. 5 radically different governments. 5 times he should have been executed. 5 times he wasn't. How? Part of it was brilliance. Part of it was treachery, depending on who you ask. But a central part was something far simpler and far more psychological. Talleyrand was never fully available. He arrived late to meetings. He spoke rarely, and when he did, people leaned in. He withheld his opinion until opinions had calcified around him, and then he delivered his verdict like a papal bull. Napoleon once called him a silk stocking filled with mud. he meant it as an insult. Talleyrand took it as a compliment. Because the silk stocking, the surface, was what people responded to. And the weight inside, the density, the unknowability, that was what kept them off balance. This is the third reversal. Value is not intrinsic. Value is perceived. And perceived value is almost entirely a function of availability. Water is not precious until there is a drought. If you answer every message immediately, you are water in the rainy season. If you're always agreeable, always available, always enthusiastic, you cost nothing. And things that cost nothing are not guarded, not pursued, not valued. Now, I want to be precise here because this is misunderstood constantly. This is not about being rude. It's not about ignoring people to make them feel bad. It's about authentic scarcity. When your time is actually full. When your attention is genuinely selective. When you have developed, internally, a set of standards for what deserves your energy. People feel that immediately. There's a psychological phenomenon called reactance, first described by Jack Brem in 1966, when people perceive that something is becoming less available. They don't just desire it more in the moment. They value it intrinsically more. The mere fact of potential loss activates a drive that availability never could. So the question is not, how do I make myself seem unavailable? The question is, what am I so committed to, so absorbed in, that my scarcity is genuine? Build that life. The influence follows automatically. Talleyrand didn't pretend to have a rich, interior life. He actually had one. His opinions were rare because he actually thought deeply before forming them. His presence was powerful because he was genuinely doing things when he was absent. This cannot be fully faked. Not for long. Not at the level that matters. But here's the cold comfort. Even the intention to build it changes behavior. Even the commitment to becoming someone whose time is genuinely valuable, that commitment, pursued seriously, starts rewiring how people perceive you almost immediately. Reversal 4. The mirror trap. Become what people need to see. Let's talk about Augustus Caesar. Not Julius. Augustus, the one who actually won. After the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BC, 3 men fought over the Roman world. Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Julius's adopted heir, a sickly, reportedly timid 18-year-old named Octavian. Nobody took him seriously. He was not physically imposing. He was not a great orator in the thundering tradition. He had never commanded a major battle. And yet, within 15 years, he ruled the entire Roman world alone. How? One of his key weapons was almost invisible. Octavian studied the people he needed to win over. Not their arguments, their needs, their fears, their self-images. To the Senate, he presented himself as the restorer of the old republic, deeply respectful of tradition, never wanting the title of king, just a humble first citizen. To the military, he was Caesar's heir, bold, connected to the glory of the legions, ready to continue the expansion. To the Roman people, He was the bringer of peace after decades of civil war. The tired farmer and the exhausted merchant both wanted the same thing. He gave them a face for it. He was different things to different people. Not a liar, or not only a liar. He was a mirror. This is the fourth reversal. The most dangerous person in any room is not the one who has the strongest personality. It's the one who makes other people feel most strongly that their personality is seen, understood, and valued. The psychological term is mirroring, and in its clinical form, it's associated with narcissistic behavior. But as a conscious, deliberate social tool, it operates on something real. Every human being carries inside them an idealized version of who they are, a self-concept they quietly protect and nurture. Show someone that you see that version, the capable version, the wise version, the brave version, and they will do almost anything to keep being that person in front of you. They won't be doing it for you. They'll be doing it for themselves, and you'll be getting exactly what you need. Benjamin Franklin, and yes, he appears everywhere because he was genuinely one of the most socially intelligent humans who ever lived, wrote in his autobiography about a rival in the Pennsylvania legislature, a man who hated Franklin and made no secret of it. Franklin didn't confront him. He didn't win him over with flattery. He asked to borrow a book, a rare book, one that the rival was known to own. The rival lent it. Franklin returned it promptly with a kind note. From that day forward, they were on good terms. The rival became an ally, Franklin later wrote. And this is now known as the Ben Franklin effect, that a man who has done you a favor will like you more than a man you have done a favor for. The psychology? When someone does something kind for you, they have to explain it to themselves. And the easiest explanation is, I must like this person. Otherwise, why did I help them? You let someone be generous toward you, and they become fond of you, not because of what you gave, because of what you allowed them to give. Let people perform their best self in front of you. Then get out of the way. Reversal 5. The silence weapon. The power of what you do not say. There's a famous story about Abe Lincoln. Not the president version, the young lawyer version. He was riding the circuit in Illinois, a group of attorneys traveling together from courthouse to courthouse, and a junior lawyer got into a heated argument with a local judge. Everyone waited to see what Lincoln would do. He was the senior man. Surely he'd weigh in? He said nothing. He sat. He listened. He made no expression. Later, when the judge and the other lawyer had both over-argued their positions into corners, Lincoln calmly said 3 sentences. 3. The room shifted, not because what he said was genius, though it was precise, because everyone in that room had been projecting their own anxieties into his silence for an hour. And when he finally spoke, they were already primed. The room had written his speech for him. This is the 5th reversal. Silence is not absence. Silence is pressure. Every pause in a conversation is filled by the other person with whatever they fear most, want most, or feel most guilty about. The interrogators know this. The great therapists know this. The ancient Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote in the Meditations, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change." He didn't say he'd argue. He didn't say he'd defend. He simply held open the space. In negotiation, the first person to speak after a key moment has been made almost always loses ground. Not because speaking is weakness, but because in that silence, the other person begins to negotiate with themselves. They begin to hear their own position as perhaps unreasonable. They begin to wonder what you know that they don't. And then they offer the concession you needed. Without you ever asking, this requires something very difficult. Comfort with being misunderstood. Most people rush to explain themselves because silence feels like disapproval. It feels like failure. It creates social anxiety that becomes almost unbearable after a few seconds. If you can sit in silence without flinching, that alone makes you unusual. Unusual things command attention. Attention is power. Reversal 6, the long game. Why masters think in years and fools think in moments. There was a Japanese general named Tokugawa Ieyasu. He unified Japan. He founded a dynasty that lasted 250 years, and for most of his early career, for decades, he waited while others fought and burned and rose and fell. Tokugawa watched. He built alliances quietly. He absorbed lessons from defeats. He let rivals destroy each other, and then stepped into the vacuum with a patience that was almost inhuman. One of his most famous sayings is sometimes translated as, "The strong bull does not need to charge." Because the bull's power is obvious. The charge is for the insecure. This is the 6th reversal. The reason most people never develop real influence is not that they lack intelligence. It's that they're optimizing for the wrong time scale. They want results this week, this conversation, this interaction. And so they push, they demand, they reveal need. And the moment you reveal need, you hand over leverage. Cialdini called it scarcity applied to yourself. You become obviously pursuing, obviously wanting. And suddenly, the thing you want can name its price. The master thinks in seasons. He asks not, "How do I get this person to agree right now?" He asks, "What does this person need to believe about themselves and about me for the right answer to feel obvious to them in 3 months?" And then he builds that slowly, patiently, without asking. That patience is its own form of power. It communicates, non-verbally, deeply, that you will be fine either way. And people are inexplicably drawn to people who don't need them. They pursue them. They try to impress them. They start asking how they can be useful. And then the question has reversed entirely. So here's where we are. 6 principles. 0 force. No asking. Identity assignment. Debt architecture. Authentic scarcity. Mirroring. Strategic silence. The long game. These are not techniques in the shallow sense. They are orientations. Ways of seeing the social world as a system that can be understood and if you are patient and honest and disciplined enough, shaped. Now, before I let you go, I need you to sit with something uncomfortable. Go back through the past month of your life. Think about the people who influenced you. The colleague who somehow always gets the team to do what he wants. The friend who always seems to get the better deal. The person in your life whose opinion you find yourself carefully managing. Ask yourself, was that really their natural charisma? Or was some part of that, some strategic, quiet, deliberate part, something they were building? Because here's the truth that nobody says out loud. These principles don't only work when you're the one using them. They work on you every single day. And the first step to not being moved without your knowledge, the first and most essential step, is to see clearly. See the architecture. Name the debt. Feel the mirror. Whether you choose to use these tools yourself is your decision. Your ethics, your conscience, but see them, please. Because the alternative, the comfortable assumption that people just naturally want to help you, or naturally get along with you, or naturally follow your lead, that assumption is not just naive. It is expensive. Stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.